Of all the Grand Prix circuits, there's no other that has the sheer charisma of Monza, because this is the one that's hosted top-level motor racing for some 70 years. It's where the all-time greats have thrilled the world. Men like Caracciola, Nuvolari, Ascari, Moss and Fangio. Grand Prix history almost literally oozes from the tarmac. And it's where, today, the two top men who are vying for the World Championship renew their struggle for supremacy, Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell. They do so on the toughest track of the year, where reliability could decide the race after a thrilling final qualifying session in which Ayrton Senna took his 59th pole position, with Mansell desperately unlucky not to be there after being badly balked on his first attempt and losing a lot of time in heavy traffic on his second. But the excitement at Monza started on Thursday, when the motor racing world learned that the sensational newcomer, Michael Schumacher, had switched from the Jordan team with which he'd made his debut in Belgium to the Benetton team, in favour of Roberto Moreno, who had in turn taken Schumacher's place with Jordan. Confused? So was everybody. And sadly, the transfers involving team bosses Tom Walkinshaw and Eddie Jordan created a continuing legal wrangle which does Formula One no credit. But Schumacher has continued to astound by qualifying 7th in his first drive for Benetton. Michael Schumacher is the newest of the young Grand Prix drivers, but his new teammate, 3 times world champion Nelson Piquet, is the oldest, and he's been celebrating his 200th Grand Prix with mixed feelings, for it seems likely that he too will be an ex-Benetton driver next year. But what about Ferrari at Monza, the team the passionate tifosi cheer for so frenziedly? The prancing horse has yet to win this year and doesn't seem likely to do so here, because motor racing's most famous team is in disarray.
In fact, we had a good car last year, and especially the team worked very well during the year. When I arrived in the team, they were listening to me, and they were very motivated to progress. And on the engine side especially, we made a big step forward, and also on the chassis side. And then we reached the end of the season where our car was almost the best, or one of the best, with the McLaren anyway, and it was getting better and better. What the problem was, the people without a big experience of Formula One thought that when one car was competitive in the last race, it was for sure competitive in the first race of the next season, which is absolutely not true at all in modern Formula One. Even if I need some luck, I will take it, because especially at Monza, and also for me, I've never done a season without winning a race, except the first year at McLaren. But I would be surprised if I don't win one this year. But that would be very bad for me if I can't.
Constructors' Championship. McLaren have a 16-point lead over Williams, 99 points to 83, with Ferrari well back in third spot on 35 points. So 53 laps now, 191 miles in all. Let's join our commentators, James Hunt and Murray Walker.
And welcome to this most historic of circuits. There has been Grand Prix racing at Monza for nearly 70 years, and you're looking now at the driver's briefing earlier on today. Nigel Mansell going in to hear the words of wisdom from the president of FISA, Monsieur Jean-Marie Balestre. And there he is on the left. I'm glad to tell you, incidentally, that when we got here today, we looked at the skies and were worried about the possibility of rain and very, very heavy clouds and quite a stiff breeze. It was cold. I'm glad to tell you that all that has rolled away. And whilst we haven't got the 30-degree temperatures that we've had for the last 2 days, it's about 26, I should think now, there is every prospect of this race being dry. Ayrton Senna making a point, and he was making quite a lot of them in the driver's briefing this morning. So this is round 12 of the 16-race World Championship, and as you heard from Bob, it's really a critical race for Nigel Mansell, because he's 22 points behind Ayrton Senna, Nigel Mansell having won in France, Britain and Germany, and Ayrton Senna having won 6 of the 11 races so far this season after a superb comeback by the McLaren team. I say comeback because they were in real trouble mechanically in terms of comparing the performance of their V12 Honda-powered car with the V10 Renault-powered Williams after the Canadian Grand Prix, which Nigel Mansell so nearly won. But it was a case of all hands to the pump. The McLaren people at Woking, the Honda people at Waco in Japan, the Shell Fuel people at their headquarters, and they came up with the answer when Ayrton Senna won in Hungary and then repeated his victory in Belgium. And now he's taken pole position for the 59th time, but 0.2 of a second covers the first 4 on the grid. 0.6 of a second covers the first 6 on the grid, and 1 second covers the 7th to the 18th on the grid, because all the teams have had the opportunity to come to 2 major testing sessions at Monza, and the result is that their cars have had plenty of mileage to get them settled in, get the engines tuned, to get the suspension set, and of course they've had the 2 days of practice on Friday and Saturday, and this morning's half-hour warm-up, during which Alain Prost was fastest. And hopefully, from his point of view, he will not be making the mistake that he made with tyres last year, because he made an incorrect tyre choice, as a result of which Ayrton Senna won again at Monza, and Alain Prost failed to do so. And the Frenchman, incidentally, has won 3 times here, and Ayrton Senna won last year. So, that very close margin, and you're looking now, we've got cameras here today on the 2 Ferraris and on the 2 Benettons, of which more later, because there have been some pretty exciting happenings around the Benetton team in the last couple of days. But pictures from Alain Prost's car and from Jean Alesi, who was 5th fastest in the warm-up this morning. Berger was 2nd, Nigel Mansell was 3rd, and only 0.6 of a second covered the first 6 places in the warm-up this morning. So we have every reason to expect a very, very close race, and that is Alain Prost in 5th position on the grid. And Alain Prost, who is not particularly happy with his Ferrari team at the moment. He's unhappy with the management, he's unhappy with the results of that management. He's unhappy with the fact that the car, which was good last year, has had, in his opinion, not enough work done on it to improve it, unlike the McLaren Honda there of number 1 world champion Ayrton Senna, who is, as usual, cool, calm and collected self. On the left of the grid, as you look at it, is Nigel Mansell's Williams Renault. And just as in most Grand Prix, so in this one, the run up to the first complex of corners is going to be very, very important indeed. The first complex of corners here are much further away than the La Source hairpin at Belgium was from the start. It's called the Rettifilo, this selection of corners, but the first man into and out of that, and hopefully they all exit it together, is going to have a big advantage. James.
Yes, in fact, Monza is one of the circuits that is more easy to pass on, and this is not a race, I'm glad to say, that is going to be won and lost at the start. We have a pretty interesting situation in the main protagonists for the championship, namely McLaren and Williams, seem to be extremely evenly matched here, both in qualifying. There was only 3 or 4 tenths of a second covering the 4 cars, and again in this morning's warm-up. The Ferraris were a little bit off the pace, just not far behind, but a little bit behind nevertheless in qualifying. Although Prost put that back across on full tanks this morning, he was in fact quickest. But it was all very marginal, only a few tenths, so it's going to be really a matter of fine-tuning on the setup of the cars. There's plenty of opportunity to overtake here at Monza. The straights are long enough to get a good tow, get in the slipstream of the car in front, and use its hole in the air to pull up alongside and pass. So this is a race where the setup of the car is going to be absolutely crucial for the World Championship, because Mansell, who must beat Senna, to keep his hopes alive, is going to have to do it on fine-tuning of setup. All the teams have had two long test sessions at Monza in the past, so they know a lot about this circuit. And 2 days of practice has not split them for performance, so we wait to see who's got it right on the day for setup.
You see the grid unrolling before you, and you will probably have noticed that 7th on the grid, behind the 2 Ferraris, the 2 McLarens and the 2 Williams, is the incredible young Michael Schumacher, who qualified for his first Grand Prix in Belgium, 7th on the grid in a Jordan. Since then, he has switched teams and is now with the Benetton team, but again, in a new car and on a different make of tyres. He has started, or will be starting, 7th on the grid and was 7th fastest in the warm-up this morning. But with 5 minutes to go before the start of the 53 lap, that's 191 miles, Italian Grand Prix here at Monza, in the pit lane is Jonathan Palmer with news for us.
Well, we've got both McLarens on the Goodyear advised B compound and both Williams cars too. Prost is also on B's all round, but Alesi is the oddball. He's taken the choice of making the left side of his car with the harder A compound and the right side with the softer B, because he feels the car is better balanced on that side. Now, it may be that allows him to run right through. As the temperatures climb, the B compound could be slightly marginal.
Yes, it would appear that on the B compound, the problem is not with wear. There's no wear problem here, but the compound, of course, is marginal on temperature, and if, as Jonathan says, temperatures climb, and the drivers particularly play a part in this, if they're a bit rough with the tyres early in the race, they slide the car too much and put too much heat in, then you get quite a marked drop-off in performance of the tyre. And that is certainly going to be playing a part in the tactics of the race. Now, what's this marshal going to do? Stamp on our camera? Nope. So the driver certainly plays a part. He's got to nurse his tyres in the first 10 to 15 laps of this race when the car is at its heaviest with all that fuel on board, and try and, in order to maintain a good performance towards the end of the race. But certainly the Goodyear B compound runners are intending to not have to stop for tyres.
Right in the centre of your picture, a little to the left, is the magnificent new grandstand pits and hospitality boxes complex that was put up at Monza last year after the old one had been swept away. As I was saying, this circuit has been in use for top-level motor racing since the early 1920s. It is, with the exception of Monaco, the most historic of them all in current use, and certainly the most historic man-made as opposed to normal roads circuit. Now, the way the circuit goes, as you look at Ayrton Senna starting on the left-hand side of the grid, and now you're looking from the Ferrari there, you can see the new coving in front of the driver, the black Kevlar, which has been done to reduce reflections in the driver's eyes. So Senna on the right, Mansell on the left. It's going to be an interesting situation here. Senna with a normal hand-change 6-speed gearbox. Nigel Mansell, of course, has got the semi-automatic gearbox that the Williams team have been using all season, and which gave a lot of trouble earlier on, but hopefully, from their point of view, has now been totally overcome. The Williams team have had some brake trouble in recent races, but they say pretty confidently they have overcome that. And you're looking now at Alain Prost in 5th position on the grid. So, when they leave the grid, they go into that complex of corners I was telling you about, the Rettifilio. Then the famous, that's Nigel Mansell, Curva Grande, which they take in 4th gear at about 170 miles an hour. Up to the Rogier, which is one of the 3 chicane complexes. In the dark glasses, incidentally, is Roland Brunschreider, the man who's responsible for starting all the Grand Prix races. Then they go from the Rogier into the famous Lesmo bends 1 and 2, where getting the exit right is absolutely critical. That is Gerhard Berger, 3rd on the grid, and this morning he was 2nd fastest to Alain Prost, just 0.2 of a second slower. Out of the Lesmo bends into the Ascari chicane, named after the late, very great multiple world champion Alberto Ascari, who dominated racing in the early 1950s and was tragically killed here at Monza. Then on to the Parabolica, an enormously spectacular corner, which they exit at about 160 miles an hour. They exit at about 160 miles an hour, build up to nearly 205 miles an hour in the case of the Williams, which was fastest yesterday, before they complete the lap and start all over again. 53 laps, and we're about to see the parade, the assembly lap, where Ayrton Senna will be responsible for leading the other 25 competitors around. As James has said, you can see from the width of the circuit here that unlike, for instance, Hungary, where the man who takes pole position and gets away first, and this year, of course, it was Ayrton Senna, is almost impossible to pass. There is plenty of room for passing here. So, the Italian Grand Prix proceedings have started. We wait now and make sure that they all get away safely. Last on the grid is the Lotus of Mika Hakkinen, who's 25th, and Olivier Griard's Fondmetal. And that's the Riccardo that they're exiting now. Now they are into the Curva Grande. That is where Ayrton Senna was removed from the Italian Grand Prix a few years ago by Jean-Louis Schlesser in 1988, which spoiled McLaren's chances of winning all 16 Grand Prix that year. Now we are looking back from the Roja, which is a left-right chicane, which was specially put in to slow the cars down. And you can see that there is an enormous gravel trap there. We've had several people go off into it during the practice sessions on Friday and Saturday. And the car, such as the friction of that gravel trap and the depth of it, stops well before it gets to the tar wall. Out of the Roja into the famous Lesmo bends with Ayrton Senna leading round, followed by Nigel Mansell. McLaren leads the Williams, Gerhard Berger. Behind Berger is Riccardo Patrese. Then the Ferraris frantically dodging about. The first of them, Alain Prost, with the yellow flashes on the front and rear wings. Jean Alesi really giving it some action. That's Michael Schumacher behind him in the Benetton, getting ready for his first drive. Let's hope he gets further than he did in Belgium, where he went from 7th to 5th by the first corner, only to burn his clutch out and retire almost immediately on the first lap. So now exiting the Parabolica, and in the background you see the old banked circuit at Monza, which has not been used for a long time now, appallingly bumpy and difficult. Now, a tip for the statistically minded to mull over. Ayrton Senna has won every Grand Prix this year that he started in from pole position. Nigel Mansell on the left will be hoping that this is not going to be the 7th time that has happened. They're coming out of the Parabolica cleanly. You can see them forming up at the rear. There's Mika Hakkinen. He was trying to get into the wrong slot, I think, but he's taken up the right position. Watch the lights. 53 laps. The man in a green flag will go across. There he is. He's ready. They're ready to go now. This is the critical time. Senna's made a perfect start. Mansell slots in second. Berger is third. Patrese is in fourth position. Martini is trying to come up on the outside, but into the Rettifilio. It is Senna, Mansell, Berger, Patrese, then the two Ferraris, followed by one of the Benettons. Martini has got ahead of Nelson Piquet. So Michael Schumacher is in 7th position in the Benetton. Everybody has got away cleanly, and it's Senna, Mansell, Berger, Patrese. Michael Schumacher certainly got further in Italy than he got in Belgium. There he goes. And Capelli has come up well. Ivan Capelli started 12th on the grid, and he's made up several places already. approaching the Ascari bends. And they're approaching them at some 180 miles an hour, slowing down to 120 to get through. Senna, Mansell, Berger, Patrese. Alesi is in 5th position. Alain Prost is down to 6th position, so he's been passed by his teammate. Michael Schumacher is still 7th, and Patrese was having a look at Gerhard Berger to try and get through there. So coming through to complete lap 1 with Pierluigi Martini challenging Nelson Piquet. And across the line, Senna leads.
Yes, and that really was a copybook start from Ayrton Senna, just what he wanted. And not a lot Nigel Mansell could do about that. But as we discussed earlier, this is a race where passing can be done on merit. And Mansell now tracking Senna. I see dust in the background there. We couldn't see what happened. There's been an incident there coming out of the Rettifilio by the look of it. Now, let's check the cars to see that we're all in place. First 3 are still the same. Patrese, Ferrari, Schumacher. So, not in the leading group.
And the first 7 are already starting to pull away from whoever the 8th man is, and I can't tell you at the moment. It was Nelson Piquet with Pierre. It might have been a coming together between Pierluigi Martini and Nelson Piquet, who are jointly battling for 8th place. We'll soon know. Senna, Mansell, Berger, Patrese.
Certainly, Mario, was a bigger gap behind than before, and Martini had been challenging Nelson Piquet, so let's wait. That gap is much bigger now. We've got a replay coming here, and it's the group, that's the first 7, you see, but we have, a bit of curve hopping by Jean Alesi,
who very nearly hit Riccardo Patrese. Now, this is it from the Ferrari. Now, that's Prost. So you see Jean Alesi going through and over the gravel trap at the Rettifilio, creating an enormous cloud of dust, and that enabled Riccardo Patrese to move up a place.
Yes, and that would also explain why the big gap behind, because with that dust, the drivers following would certainly have backed off and slowed down.
And trouble in the pits. Let's identify it. It's a Ferrari, and it's obviously Jean Alesi. Well, he's been a bit of a wild man one way and another in several races this year. He was obviously trying too hard there, and that going off is Martin Brundle in the Brabham Yamaha. Martin didn't have a very good practice, and he certainly hasn't had a very good race so far. Race order at the front remains the same, except that Patrese is now 4th.
Yes, Martin Brundle's form this weekend has been a bit wayward. I haven't had a chance to speak to him to find out why, but one gets the impression maybe he's dreaming of Benetton's, which is where he's headed for next season, rather than the job in hand. Regarding Alesi's off there at the Rettifilio, that was a pure mistake. There was no reason for him to be pushing that hard into the Rettifilio to make that mistake. And as a Jordan, off into the sand trap, and it looked like Moreno's flashy yellow helmet. Yes, that is Roberto Moreno. And what a disappointing finish to a terrible weekend for Roberto Moreno. Summarily sacked from the Benetton team for no good reason when he had a valid contract with them, and then this.
So now on lap 3 with Roberto Moreno out of the Italian Grand Prix, first drive for Benetton. You can see it is Senna, Mansell, Berger and Patrese, the 2 McLarens and the 2 Williams very close to each other. In 5th position, it is Alain Prost. Here's the replay coming up of Roberto Moreno going off. Eventually, when the picture starts to move, watch the green Jordan. Well, no, don't watch it. We'll watch this with you. And you see Gerhard Berger there challenging or trying to challenge Nigel Mansell. But in 6th position, Michael Schumacher driving for Benetton for the first time. He's not only completed the first lap, but he's completed the 3rd lap as well, and he is in the points.
Well, now, as the race settles down, form that we saw in practice and qualifying is being confirmed, and that is that the McLarens and the Williamses, the protagonists for the championship, being Senna and Mansell, are very, very evenly matched. And there was Alesi in the front of your picture then, just going out of it, nearly lapped, and after his pit stop. But we found in practice and qualifying that there was nothing to choose, both in qualifying trim and on full tanks in race trim, really, bar the odd tenth of a second here or there, between Williams and McLaren. And this means that this race is going to be down to fine-tuning of the setup. But all the teams have had 2 long test sessions here at Monza quite recently, and as a result, they know very well how to set their cars up. Everything is known, and it's fine-tuning on the day that's going to win or lose this race. Senna has the advantage at the moment, but remember, this is a circuit where overtaking is quite possible. Senna is just starting to stretch his lead a little bit, but that, I would imagine, is Mansell just taking that little breathing space, because it's much too wearing on both man and machine to drive right under somebody else's rear wing for any length of time, and you really only move that close when making a challenge. So I don't think Mansell is really slipping back. I think he's just moving back to get comfortable, because right now there is no point in him making a challenge. Mansell would appear to be doing exactly the right thing. Senna leading the race, he's not under pressure, and I'm sure these top drivers will be thinking about looking after their tyres right now in order to be equipped to have a big fight in the second half of this race.
Lap 5 out of 53 with Jean Alesi last, having had that tyre stop. And you see coming towards you the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. And they, of course, are Senna going into the Parabolica. Mansell, Berger is 3rd. Patrese is in 4th position. There is the Williams exiting the Parabolica now. Alain Prost is 5th. Schumacher is in 6th position in the Benetton. You see him as they go through to complete lap 5. That is just under 1/10 race the distance.
And Michael Schumacher in what is his real race debut in Formula One after his rather abortive attempted race in Spa when the clutch went so early, is being, just as we expected, very impressive indeed. He's starting to run away from his teammate Nelson Piquet. He's right with Alain Prost and pressing.
Yes, already Nelson Piquet, as you watch Senna, Mansell, Berger, Patrese, already Nelson Piquet in 7th position is 4 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, his Benetton teammate. An incredible debut by Schumacher, who's been used to sports car driving for Mercedes, but not single-seaters at this level.
Yes, but he's been well schooled, Murray, in Formula 3, which is possibly even more dramatic and hectic than Formula 1. So he's been well educated, to be fair. Hasn't done any single-seater racing this season for Formula 1, but he was German Formula 3 champion last year and won the Far East Series at the end of the year. As the leaders come round to complete lap 6. Alesi will probably hold station now ahead of them. Remember, though, that he's a lap down. So Senna goes through. And then, behind this group of 4 is Alain Prost, and being pressed by Michael Schumacher, who, as we've just said, is running away from his teammate Nelson Piquet, which again is no great surprise, but at nearly a second a lap, and that is impressive. But what is interesting is to speculate just if Michael Schumacher would still be behind Prost if he was driving a Jordan, because with all the interest between the two teams, it has become clear this weekend that Jordan, there's a mistake, and that looked like Patrese coming past Berger.
Yes, and there they are. So, first Senna, second Mansell. Riccardo Patrese, the Italian veteran, has moved in the second Williams Renault up into 3rd position ahead of Gerhard Berger. So now Senna has got 2 Williams Renaults breathing down his neck, metaphorically. Alain Prost is still 5th, Schumacher 6th, Piquet 7th. Capelli is in 8th position, and 9th is Pierluigi Martini.
And do I detect the old McLaren Achilles heel that caused that little delay for Berger, namely gearbox trouble? Berger looked to me as if he was fumbling for a gear then when Patrese ducked round him, and he's dropped back a bit. So certainly it would appear there's some sort of mechanical trouble for Berger, and my guess would be gearbox, but that's very much guesswork as Prost comes past. So Berger is in trouble, and Schumacher's right behind.
Yes, Gerhard Berger has had most of the McLaren bad luck this season. 5 retirements. Ayrton Senna, of course, ran out of petrol a couple of times, but he's kept going long enough for those 6 victories. And now you see that the battle is developing, really, between Nigel Mansell in 2nd place, there he is, and Ayrton Senna, with Riccardo Patrese ahead of Berger, Prost ahead of... No, there's the McLaren, still in 4th position. Prost is 5th, Schumacher tucked up tight behind him. So, McLarens, Ferraris, and the single Benetton Ford of Michael Schumacher. to the Roja. And Schumacher is challenging now. Schumacher having a go at Alain Prost, and it looks to me as though he's going through.
Well, no, he would have been overly brave to have stayed inside Prost then, because they enter their first Lesmo pretty much flat. But Schumacher is looking most impressive, and I don't think he's going to stay where he is for very long. He had to drop back quite a lot then, having to back off to let Prost get into Lesmo, but he will soon recover that lost ground. And of course, the main excitement this weekend has taken, as we look at the Leighton House in the pits, well, that was Maurizio Gugelmin. The main excitement this weekend, of course, has taken place off the track, and that involves the wrangling over Michael Schumacher. The situation I find quite deplorable has much more to do with big business, vested interests, and pure greed than motor racing. Sadly, Schumacher himself seems to be more of a passenger in his fate being decided than a participant. And the leader slows up. Now Senna coming under pressure from both Williamses. Patrese has started to catch Nigel Mansell. And Mansell starting to press Ayrton Senna.
Yes, indeed, and that's the leader, and Mansell has now got psychological and practical support from Riccardo Patrese, and I don't know whether Ayrton Senna will know, and if he does know, he can't do anything about it, but it's just one McLaren effectively in the running now. We are on lap 9 out of 53, the first 3 out on their own. Senna, Mansell, Patrese, Gerhard Berger in that 4th position, still ahead of Prost. Schumacher is still in 6th position, ahead of his teammate Nelson Piquet, driving in his 200th Grand Prix, incidentally. Ivan Capelli in the Leighton House, who's only finished once this year in the points. But is he going to finish here? If he does, I'm sure he will be in the points, because there's going to be a lot of car mortality in this race. Now, here is Capelli speaking of him, and Pierluigi Martini losing the Minardi Ferrari. And incidentally, they are losing their Ferrari engines this year. That's Pierluigi Martini, I think, spinning out of the race unless his tyres are on the hard stuff and he can get away.
Yes, and that looks as if he locked the rear brakes, which set up that problem. And Senna is coming under pressure from the two Williamses, but it's not so much that the Williamses have speeded up, funny enough, just that Senna at the moment is not lapping particularly quickly. And that makes me start to watch to see if he's got any sort of a tyre problem. Yellow flag just waving there. That'll be for Martini's car, probably still being removed. This is a tough situation for Senna. And of course, there's not a lot he can do. If the Williamses have got the straight line speed to get past him, then they will. But the onus is on them. To look after his tyres to a certain extent still, and remember that Mansell and Patrese's tyres will now be suffering, being that close behind the McLaren. The cars will be sliding more, but Mansell's looking in a good attacking position.
Yeah, now there is something where James and I are always going on about tyres, I know, but there is something significant to say about the 6th man in this race. He is the first driver who is not on Goodyear tyres. He's using Pirellis, and he, of course, is Michael Schumacher. And we know that all the Goodyear runners, as James said earlier on, started on the softer B compound in the full expectation of going the whole race. But Michael Schumacher, using the competitive product, has got a mixture of tyres on his car, and it's conceivable that it might be a benefit. It hasn't been in the past, but it could be today. There's a long, long way to go in this race. We're on lap 11 so far, and you can see that Nigel Mansell is really breathing down the rear wing of Ayrton Senna's McLaren now, and he's getting into a position where he could attack and take the lead.
Yes, things very much hotting up at the front. Williams did indeed take it, or Mansell took a little bit of a breather. He didn't want to ruin his tyres early on by pressing Senna. That was quite the right thing to do, but now he seems to be mounting an attack, and Patrese, of course, is right there as well. Now, behind them, Berger, you may remember, seemed to have a bit of a hiccup a couple of laps ago, and Patrese got past and Prost nearly did. Well, whatever his problem was, it doesn't seem to be afflicting him now, because the last time across the line was his fastest lap of the race, and he's got going again. He's actually pulled away a little bit from Prost. So it's quite possible that he has had a bit of gearbox problems, but and you get surprised by it. But once you've clocked what the problem is in the cockpit, you can very often drive round it. And that would appear that if he does have a mechanical problem, he's obviously learnt what to do. It's minor, and he can cope with it. And Patrese is really pressing Nigel Mansell. Now, I wonder what... Mansell had to block him there into the rettifilio. Now, I wonder what the Williams team orders are here, if any.
Good question, because Patrese is determined to do well here. Of course, he hasn't given up his World Championship hopes. Something dreadful would have to happen to Senna for a series of races in order for Riccardo Patrese still to be able to win the World Championship. But all is not lost for the Italian, and he obviously decided to have a go at Nigel Mansell there. No change in the first 6 as up towards the Lesmo bends again go Senna, now out of them. Mansell, Patrese. In the background, Gerhard Berger is still within sight of the 2 Williams cars ahead of him. This is the Ascari bends. And it looks to me as though Maurizio Gugelmin is about to be engulfed by, first of all, the McLaren, then the 2 Williams, then Gerhard Berger, Alain Prost still soldiering on, and Alesi is coming up through the field, but he's still well down after that long stop of his.
Now, Michael Schumacher appears to be dropping back very, very slightly from Alain Prost, and it would not surprise me to find retrospectively that maybe he's gone a little bit hard on his tyres early in the race, so close behind another car, and it may be that he's getting a little drop off of the performance of his tyres. But of course he's got a long time to learn all these little tricks of the trade.
Well, in his fight back, Jean Alesi, who is currently 22nd, has put up the fastest lap of the race so far, 1 minute 27.4, which is 1.2 seconds off the lap record held by Ayrton Senna at 150.42 miles an hour. 150 miles an hour average around this 3.6 mile Monza lap.
Now, 2 Williamses breathing right down Senna's neck, and well placed if they can get a good run through the Ascari chicane to get the toe down into the last corner. Now, see if Williams. Mansell looks good through the chicane, but not quite close enough, or I don't think so, particularly with Gugelmin's Leighton House in a position to give Senna a little bit of a tow. And certainly the McLaren Honda seems very good in a straight line. They probably, for sure, McLarens have set their car up to be particularly good in a straight line with a view to that, rather than being absolutely perfectly quick around the corners. And the power of the Honda engine seems able to keep the Williamses at bay at the moment, but bear in mind it's being helped. There is Frank Williams, of course, watching on TV, and I think the back marker, yes, and Gugelmin, well, he got out of the way all right. That's one way of doing it. No problem with him blocking the leaders there.
Maurizio Gugelmin was very, very lucky to get away with it. I remember seeing Bruno Giacomelli bogged down well and truly in that gravel trap in the past. But Gugelmin had got enough momentum in the Leighton House to keep going. Here's a replay of it. Watch him. I suspect he may have been watching Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell in his mirrors as well. Anyway, he locks up, goes over the curb, goes on across the gravel, across the other curve, back into the race. Senna leads, Mansell second, Patrese third, Berger coming out still in fourth position, Prost and Schumacher.
Yes, and I think Senna will be breathing a bit of a sigh of relief that he's emerged from all that excitement still in the lead, because no doubt he backed off a bit extra then because of Gugelmin's antics in front of him, and that put Mansell very, very close to him as they went down to the next chicane. There's the background. Now, Prost you saw coming out last, and Schumacher is starting to fall away from this leading group, slowly, gently, but he is, of course, still pulling away strongly from teammate Nelson Piquet, and is now some 7 seconds ahead of Piquet.
This is lap 14 out of 53. And of course it's terribly important for Mansell to get past Piquet, past Senna. He must finish ahead of the Brazilian. because of the World Championship situation, if Mansell is to stand a chance of winning it for the first time this year. And he wants to finish not just ahead, but well ahead. Ideally, from Mansell's point of view, Senna would have some sort of a problem and retire, as Mansell had to in Belgium. But the McLaren has been consistently reliable all through the years. Magnificent preparation. And Senna, of course, with his considerable experience and his dedication to the sport, is the man who's been through just about every kind of experience in motor racing now. And if anybody can keep a car going, he can. So now they're coming up to a tail ender at the present moment. We'll see who it is. Now here's the replay. Now that is Nelson Piquet going off. And Piquet was in 7th position, and he's lost a place there, and it looks as though he was having a problem with Capelli, who you see in the gravel trap as well. And now Ayrton Senna is coming up to take Mika Häkkinen, who is last at the present moment. He's got to get through before the Parabolica. And he has done so, and that's a big advantage for him. Nigel Mansell takes the racing line wide, goes past Häkkinen, who moves over. Patrese goes through in 3rd position, which has given Gerhard Berger the opportunity to move up a little. Prost is just behind him in 5th place, and Schumacher is still going. And again, Riccardo Patrese has a look. He's very anxious to get past Nigel Mansell. Lap 16.
Yes, that was a bit of excitement. Going back to Piquet's problem, I think his biggest problem was Schumacher in the team. He went off in qualifying on Friday when Schumacher had posted a time rather quicker than his, and that's the first time anybody can remember Piquet going off in qualifying for many, many years. And I think possibly the pressure of Schumacher going away from him in front may have had more to do with that little bit of an off than the attentions of Capelli. So the leading group, Senna, still just holding things off, but looking reasonably in control, if that's how you can term being in front with 2 Williamses breathing down your neck. But the fact of the matter is, the Honda engine at the moment and the straight line speed of the McLaren look just about adequate for the job, but adequate when everything is perfect. Any sort of a mistake or interference from a back marker, and that will be a Williams pass. So Senna for sure is not feeling at all comfortable.
Lap 16, and do you remember how Riccardo Patrese, who started 17th in Belgium, climbed up through the field, up into 2nd place, and was challenging Ayrton Senna for the lead? Well, Jean Alesi is starting to do the same sort of thing now, because the Frenchman in the Ferrari, who went down to 25th place after his look at the gravel trap and his tyre change, is now up into 19th place. And this is a replay of Emanuele Pirro, who disappears out of our picture. And Satoru Nakajima goes up behind Mark Blundell. And does he go off? Indeed he does. But whether Nakajima, who is driving for the last time in Italy, as he's driving for the last time in every Grand Prix he drives in this year, because he's retiring at the end of the season, and Senna still leads and is getting closer and closer.
And Mansell was beautifully placed then through the first Les mode, dropped back a little, I think, in the second, and that, of course, is because his wings will not have been working in the hole in the air made by Senna's car, and that stopped him getting a really good run at Senna into this chicane. But of course, that is the problem following another car. On the straights, it's fine. You've got a good toe. Mansell still getting the toe, and this looks as if he may be able to challenge. But no, Senna keeps just a couple of car lengths between them, and that's enough. And certainly at the moment, it looks as if the combination of the Honda engine and the aerodynamic setup, and that's a tear off that you saw the hands there, Mansell around his helmet. He was taking one of the thin tear-offs off his visor. No doubt getting a lot of dust and muck on it from Senna's car and off the track and chucked up off the tyres. And that gives him a cleaner view. So, around the Curva Grande. Down into the second chicane. Senna will want to get past, yes. And they're all past the back marker, safely enough. 3 leaders.
The back marker was Nicola Larini, who unusually has been able to start a Grand Prix, having got through qualification in the Lamborghini, but he's been into the pits for quite a long stint, so he's more than a lap behind now. And Schumacher in 6th position is about 7 seconds behind race leader Ayrton Senna, with Nelson Piquet 8th, Capelli 9th, De Cesaris is in 10th position, and through they go.
Yes, and I thought out of this earlier chicane I saw Prost challenging Berger just then, and I think that is the case. So Prost is now attacking Gerhard Berger yet again.
And you just saw Patrese having another go at Mansell as they disappeared out of the picture, and Schumacher is starting to close up on Alain Prost. No change in the first 6, but you have the feeling that there could be any moment now as lap 18 is completed. And there's Gerhard Berger, 4th position, the Austrian in the McLaren Honda. Prost goes through. That is Martin Brundle, who is about to be lapped by these 3 together. These 3 being Senna, Mansell, and Patrese. McLaren, Williams, and Williams. Now there's Brundle. You just saw him go through the picture. But Martin watches his mirrors scrupulously. I was watching him during practice, and he was on a quick lap, but Senna was coming behind him, and he moved over, sacrificed his own lap to let the Brazilian through, and he will see this trio bearing down on him on lap 19 and move over in the Brabham Yamaha. And incidentally, his teammate Mark Blundell, who is in 13th position, qualified in his highest ever grid place, 11th for the Italian Grand Prix, Ascari-Benz. Now there is Martin Brundle. Now, is this going to be Mansell's chance? And he's waving Patrese. Is he waving Patrese through? Yes, he is. He is. It saw Nigel Mansell's hand come out of the cockpit. And does this mean that Mansell has a problem? I can't see him willingly let Patrese through unless he has.
No, I don't think that necessarily means that he's got a problem. I think probably that he felt that Patrese is quicker than him. Patrese, after all, came up on him very quickly once he got past Berger. He's pressed him all the way, and I think what Mansell wants is to see if Patrese can succeed where he has failed in getting past Ayrton Senna. After all, Nigel has tried for many laps. He's been well placed. He has not been able to do it. It may be that Patrese has a little bit of a different setup in his car, or maybe his engine's working a bit better, and because above all, Williams need Senna not to win this race. If Patrese can get in front of Senna, then he can help Mansell, and this may be very good team tactics indeed. Let's hope that Mansell doesn't have a problem.
He's dropped back just a little, but he may be doing that quite deliberately. Anyway, all 3 of them have got to take Martin Brundle, who is keeping ahead of the McLaren and the 2 Williams well. But if they arrive at the wrong place from Ayrton Senna's point of view, it could give Riccardo Patrese, who is really pushing now, the opportunity to get through and take the lead in the Italian Grand Prix, which of course he has never won, and there is no race he would like to win more than that. And there is Ayrton Senna taking the line to keep Patrese back as they go into the Parabolica. Now, if Patrese was just a bit closer, and he's not, he could have possibly got out of Ayrton Senna's slipstream and taken the lead.
Yes, you see, the other thing is the biggest difference in points is between first and second place. And if they can take first away from Senna, then at least Mansell would only slip back a couple of points if he was third to Senna's second, rather than 4. So there is a big difference. But from Senna's point of view, I don't think if push comes to shove, he'll fight Patrese very hard, or certainly won't take any risks over it, because so long as his job is to finish in front of Nigel Mansell, and if he can finish in front of Mansell wherever it is, it really doesn't matter to him at the moment what Patrese does.
And they still have to catch, let alone get past Martin Brundle, who is in 20th place. And the race order, as you watch Patrese taking up the attack again, is Senna leading, Patrese second, Mansell third, Berger fourth, Patrese looking, Prost is in 5th place, Schumacher is still 6th, Piquet is 7th, Capelli is 8th, De Cesaris 9th, Morbidelli is in 10th position, and now this is the opportunity. This is where Martin Brundle will move over, I think, and let them through. But Ayrton Senna is certainly not making it easy for Riccardo Patrese to get past. He seems to have an infinitely adjustable car in terms of width, and he can take up just the position on the track that he wants to. He is after all the race leader. What he must not do is blatantly weave. Now is Brundle going to let them through at the Rettifilio? Well, Senna's got through. We haven't seen whether Patrese did. Yes, he did, and Mansell has. So all three are past Martin Brundle and have lapped the Brabham Yamaha. And I was saying that Stefano Modena, who incidentally became a father yesterday evening, is in 11th place. Emanuele Pirro is in 12th place. JJ Leto, his teammate, is 13th. Then it's Comas 14th. Mark Blundell in the Brabham Yamaha is 15th. Nakajima 16th, followed by Griard, Bernard, Alesi still 19th, and Martin Brundle, who you have just seen lapped. And we're on lap 22 in this 53 lap race, with Ayrton Senna resisting the pressure magnificently. Up to the Ascari Benz. And thus far, Riccardo Patrese is not having any more luck with his unremitting pressure than Nigel Mansell did.
Yes, and if of course this tactic doesn't work and Patrese can't get past, Mansell can always come back up to Patrese's gearbox, and if the worst comes to worst, ask the team, and that's a blow up for the LaRousse. Nasty smoke there from Eric Bernard.
Yes, the only one to start, incidentally, because Aguri Suzuki, his teammate, blew 2 engines in practice. So out of the Italian Grand Prix have gone Moreno and Bernard. Oh, and over the curb goes the Williams.
Yes, Patrese really trying now. He's on a charge, and I think this is a very good move by Mansell, because it's enabled him to sit back, have a little bit of a rest, and he looks extremely comfortable where he is. And as I say, he can always ask Patrese to move out of the way towards the end of the race if they're still both behind Senna, and pick up the extra couple of points again. And if he won't do it, he can ask Frank Williams to order Patrese out of the way, and that depends on what the structure is within the team, and we can't know that. But at the moment, Patrese is looking to challenge Senna for the lead, but the McLaren Honda still looks too strong in the straight line when everything is right and there are no problems. So Williams gets in the tow, but doesn't seem to be able to pull up to and get the slingshot past.
Now, I know that's a replay of my goodness, that was a major blow-up, and that's exactly what happened to Aguri Suzuki in practice on Saturday and on Friday. A gigantic eruption from the V8 engine behind him, and Ayrton Senna goes through to complete another lap, but hang on a moment longer so that we can see whether Patrese tackles Ayrton Senna as they come out of the Rettifilio on their 23rd lap with another 30 to go. No, and we have news from Jonathan Palmer in the pit lane.
Yes, the Williams pit's beginning to look rather tense. They will certainly not admit to a strategy of Patrese now attacking Senna, and indeed the pit itself has got more active. Tyres are out and people are looking and pointing at tyre wrenches, so I think we could be in for a pit stop.
Which we certainly do not expect. The Goodyear recommendation was that their drivers should fit the B compound tyre and go through non-stop. And if that is not going to happen, that is against plans. Now, it might be happening for Williams, but then the question would be, is it going to happen for McLaren? And particularly, of course, Ayrton Senna. And you see in the background, Berger still in 4th position. 5th place is still Alain Prost. Once again, Riccardo Patrese diving to the left, diving to the right, but still he can't find an opportunity to get past from the Rettifilio. They approach that at some 185 miles an hour, exit it at about 160, and across the line again to complete lap 24. Senna, Patrese, Mansell. Next will be Berger, followed by Prost in 5th position. Schumacher is still 6th. Piquet 7th, Capelli 8th, De Cesaris is 9th in the Jordan. Morbidelli is in 10th position. 11th and 12th, Stefano Modena and the Dallara of JJ Leto. Round the Curva Grande. There is a surprisingly small crowd here by Monza standards, and they're missing this. And Nigel Mansell, now the quickest man on the circuit, 1:27.015, just over 149 miles an hour. And that is 0.8 of a second off Ayrton Senna's 1990 McLaren Honda V10 record.
Yes, so I think that's the fact that Mansell just put up the fastest lap of the race and seemed to be able to move back onto this pair's tail very easily. Underlines the fact that there is nothing wrong with his car. He's absolutely fine, and he is using the luxury of his situation and having a fully competitive teammate with him to do the attacking of Senna, and that's very intelligent tactics by Mansell.
You probably saw in the background that Gerhard Berger has been caught by Alain Prost. There's about 4 car lengths between it now for the battle for 4th and 5th places. And the laps are certainly being reeled off. That is the end of the 25th lap. Well, just imagine Ayrton Senna's position. He's led since he took off from pole position. First of all with Nigel Mansell behind him, then with Riccardo Patrese behind him. He has a 750 horsepower or so Honda V12 engine behind him. He's got to get his tactics right to decide when to pass people that he is lapping in order to avoid Riccardo Patrese having an opportunity. The heat in the cockpit will be very considerable, not as much as it might have been, because as I said earlier on, the temperature here is about 26 and it was 30, and Patrese going for it now.
Yes, that's the closest he's been out of the Lesmo. Patrese, he's right in the toe. This is a chance. And he's inside. Patrese takes the lead. Now, let's see if the McLaren Honda has looked stronger in a straight line. Senna lost a lot of ground through the chicane. He certainly won't be close enough to have a go back at Patrese there. And of course now Mansell's got the problem that at the moment Senna is in the toe that Patrese is offering, which will make Senna in fact more difficult for Mansell to pass. So there's a problem they might want to thought of for the moment. But if Patrese can pull away, that toe will go away, and at that stage Mansell can attack.
Now, if there's one thing an Italian crowd love, it's seeing a Ferrari in the lead. Here's the replay as they come up to the Ascari bends under the bridge and the old banking. Riccardo Patrese coolly pulls out from under the rear wing of Ayrton Senna's McLaren, takes the lead in the Italian Grand Prix, and as I was saying, if there's one thing an Italian crowd like to see, it's a Ferrari winning. If they can't see that, they want to see an Italian leading. And Riccardo Patrese got the whole grandstand on its feet as he went through in the lead. And now Nigel Mansell is going to have a go, because you can see that Riccardo Patrese is pulling away now, and if Nigel Mansell can get past Ayrton Senna, he will be able to do the same thing. I have little doubt that his Renault V10 engine will have just the same horsepower as Patrese's, and then Ayrton Senna would have a major problem, because Mansell could get past Patrese on orders or on merit, and that would mean that the gap... Oh, that's Patrese spinning! But Patrese has spun out down to 3rd position. Gerhard Berger is catching him, and Patrese's got to get the momentum on again, and now the attack is down to Nigel Mansell as they come down to the Parabolica with Gerhard Berger challenging Patrese, who's desperately trying to keep him back.
And that was a very stupid mistake by Riccardo Patrese. He was pulling away comfortably. Absolutely no reason to do that. We saw the puff of smoke before we'd even seen Patrese spun off, and that will not help Mansell's chances. He needed Patrese out front. He needed him around. He certainly was doing a good job for the team, and now he's thrown it all away, and that's a silly mistake, and that's going to be hard work for Mansell. But Mansell, on the other hand, has seen what Patrese can do, and he will have learned from that, and he's now looking like he's ready to take up the cudgels on his own.
Yes, and Emanuele Pirro, who is in 16th place, is going to be lapped by Patrese and Berger and Schumacher, and there could be a change then for third and fourth positions. But as James has said, now Nigel is really on his own. He's lost the support of Riccardo Patrese. There's a big gap between the two Williams cars now.
Yes, and I think you see the advantage that Patrese had there was that he may have been running a little bit less wing than Mansell, thereby making his car a little bit quicker in a straight line, because while Mansell has lined up many times, as Häkkinen there in the foreground, there Mansell switching brilliantly, selling the dummy, and he went to sell the dummy to Senna, and that's a tactic that Mansell has made almost his own. But this time it didn't work, and I've no doubt that Senna was ready for that.
As out of the pits goes Maurizio Gugelmin in the Leighton house, and Senna and Mansell are bearing down on Mika Häkkinen's Lotus, and they've just passed it. Both of them have got through the Rettifiglio, but they've still got to catch and pass Emanuele Pirro. That's him disappearing round the Curva Grande, and Mika Häkkinen is in 19th position. And Riccardo Patrese has dropped right back, so third now is Gerhard Berger. There's a replay. That's Patrese going out of the race. Riccardo Patrese retires from the Italian Grand Prix. It's all down to Mansell now. Berger is third. Prost has moved up into fourth position. Schumacher is fifth. His teammate Nelson Piquet in the second Benetton is sixth.
Yes, and if that mistake also damaged his car and caused that retirement, Patrese will not have a lot of friends in the Williams team tonight, because he was really needed out there and had been doing a tremendous job. But a mistake like that, which would be overexcitement in front of an Italian crowd, I fear, as much as anything, and the fact that he's never won the Italian Grand Prix would have contributed greatly, I'm sure, to the error. But this business, things like that are not easily forgiven. Well, certainly Mansell won't be thrilled with his performance.
Yes, now there is Pirro, who is behind Olivier Grillard. They're 15th and 16th. And Mansell will be able to see them, just as Ayrton Senna will. And they're going to be with the Von Mittal and the Dallara in a very short time. And this again could be Nigel Mansell's chance. We are on lap 30 now, and this 53-lap race as into the pits comes Martin Brundle. His teammate, Martin Brundle's teammate, Mark Blundell, is in 13th position now. And on lap 30 of the Italian Grand Prix, Senna, Mansell, Berger up to third, Prost fourth, with Schumacher in his first Grand Prix of any length, having retired so quickly in Belgium, is in a superb fifth position in what is effectively his first Grand Prix. Piquet in sixth position, Capelli in the Leighton house, running well with a chance of being in the points again if he finishes, which he's only done once this season. Frank Williams and Andrea De Cesaris in the Jordan is in eighth place. Now, there is Pirro in the red car with the red helmet, and you can see behind is Berger, and Prost is right with the second McLaren.
Yes, and they've been having a private battle really throughout the race. Prost has been nibbling away at Berger, but again the straight line speed of the Honda-powered McLaren seems to be man enough for the job, both against Mansell and in his Williams Renault, and against Prost in his Ferrari.
Now, Pirro is trying to get past Grillard. He'll be occupied with that battle. He probably won't have the time or the inclination to look in his mirrors. He should have, of course, both those things. But Senna is catching him. Now, Grillard is a notorious blocker, and I can foresee trouble here. Pirro is past Grillard and therefore up into 14th position, and Senna and Mansell have still got to get both of them.
And this is the problem for Senna through the Lesmos, because if he gets delayed, he's backed off so that he can get a good run through the second one, and that's good driving by Senna. He did not get too close, but he'll want the tow from Grillard's car, which he's getting. And I think in the confusion, Senna is going to hold on to his place. And now he should get a good run behind Pirro down on the long straight that follows the second chicane, or the back chicane, I should say. And Senna will be thankful at the moment for the tow he's getting from Pirro's car, and that should carry him in ahead, yes. What he doesn't want there is any problem on the exit. Somebody's made a lot of smoke there. And it seems to be whoever made it has gone, and that's a Ferrari in.
It's Alesi for the second time, and judging from the position of his hands, yes, Alesi retires. I saw his hands getting ready to take the steering wheel off, and I was beginning to think that he must have some sort of a problem because of the way he was failing to make progress. And there is the blow-up. John Alesi retires from the Italian Grand Prix to join Roberto Moreno, Bernard, Riccardo Patrese, several of the top men out now then, and Ferrari's awful season is continuing. Both Senna and Mansell past Emanuele Pirro, who is 13. Now they're catching Mark Blundell's Brabham Yamaha. You just saw it disappearing out of the corner there. And Gerhard Berger is 6 seconds behind Nigel Mansell. Less than a second ahead of Alain Prost. Now, that's Mark Blundell. Scored his first World Championship point in Belgium. You'll be able to study the comparative performance of the Brabham Yamaha and the McLaren Honda now as Senna dives out of his slipstream. Nigel Mansell does exactly the same thing. Into the Parabolica for the 32nd time.
And it's interesting to see Senna duck back in front of the Brabham then, and that was to stop Mansell following Senna and getting the benefit of the tow. And that was good professional driving, although it looked a bit messy as if Senna was weaving around on the straight. He was, in fact, doing something tactically important as Mansell is in position to challenge. He's going down the inside, and Senna locked his left front there just as he turned in, but he had it under control. But that was a marginal moment for both drivers. Mansell must have been right on the limit of his brakes then.
You are watching some absolutely superlative Grand Prix driving. Now you are looking from the camera of Alain Prost Ferrari in 5th place at Gerhard Berger's McLaren. Rather a picture breaker, to put it mildly, as Berger passes Griard and now Prost. You can see behind the Fonmetal.
Yes, and it was a bad picture, but what we were trying to see, of course, was how Berger and Prost dealt with the back marker. But more importantly, up front, we've got the two top men in the business at the moment, absolutely on the limit, battling wheel to wheel.
Pierluigi Martini in his Minardi Ferrari, 10.7 seconds. Nothing to write home about for a tyre stop. And Morbidelli, my apologies, in the Minardi Ferrari, as Berger goes past Mark Blundell, so third position man passes the Brabham Yamaha in 12th position, and Senna leads Mansell across the line again. This is Capelli. See the spark striking from underneath his front wing, and Mansell really, as he did before, pushing tremendously hard as they come out of the Rettifilio. And this is his opportunity as they come up to the Rogia, the second chicane.
And they really are on the limit. There was car smoke then as we joined them in the chicane, and clearly there had been locking brakes in that battle for the entry into the Rettifilio. And Senna coming under the ultimate pressure now from Nigel Mansell. It really is maximum pressure.
And Gerhard Berger is lapping just as fast now as Mansell has another look. Senna resisting the pressure as he has done and goes past the Tyrrell Honda. Up to the Ascari bends, and Nigel Mansell, is he going through and taking the lead on this occasion? Yes, he is. Mansell leads in Italy as Patrese did, and I would not expect Nigel Mansell, who now is in a position to get 10 points and Senna to have 6, to do what Riccardo Patrese did, and that is spin off. As Senna locks up, is he going off? No, that's a replay.
That was the smoke that we saw at the Rettifilio on the previous shot. And here we see again another replay, and this is Mansell ducking out of the tow, and clearly Senna is struggling now for grip. He's fought as well as he can, but I would expect Mansell now to be able to go away pretty comfortably from Ayrton Senna. And in fact, if that's probably Senna in for tyres, we can't see. And that's Senna on a very fast stop by the McLaren team indeed. So Ayrton Senna onto fresh rubber. Now, this is a fairly quick pit stop. Let's see what he's lost on the road. Senna chase Mansell and catch him, having made the top stop for tyres. I'm sure Mansell will try and stay out and run the rest of the race on those tyres.
And we wait to see whether Gerhard Berger has moved up, because it's tremendously close with that 5.9 second stop of Ayrton Senna's, because Gerhard Berger was 5.9 seconds behind him on the previous lap, so they should be absolutely together. And it's going to be very difficult for Senna, even on new tyres, to be able to catch Nigel Mansell, who goes into the Ascari bit. Now, let's just wait and see where...
So oil flag there, so somebody's been off putting some rubbish on the track. And Senna 16 seconds behind Mansell over the line as he went out of the pits. Now, it'll be a little bit more than that because he won't have been up to full speed, but it is catchable. There is some one-third, just over a third of the race left to go.
And the order is Mansell with Alain Prost coming up fast now. Well, the Italians are starting to get very anxious indeed, because Alain Prost up into second position ahead of Gerhard Berger, unseen by you. Nigel Mansell leading. We're waiting for them to come through. Alain Prost was 7.8 seconds behind Nigel Mansell at the end of the previous lap. The Englishman on his way now. He's got a comfortable cushion. And Ayrton Senna, of course, is going to have the problems of getting past the quick men who got past him when he was in for tyres. Those quick men being Prost and Berger and Schumacher, because Schumacher had gone up into fourth position. We're riding now with Nelson Piquet, who is in sixth position behind Ayrton Senna. That's not Senna in front of us at the present moment, but both the Benettons are in the points. And the Italian Grand Prix has really come alight. It was tremendously exciting with the battle for the lead, but now on lap 36, it's Mansell leading, Prost second, Berger is in third position, Schumacher is fourth, Senna is close enough to catch and take the Benetton fairly quickly, but that's Gerhard Berger. And he is ahead of the Ferrari now.
Yeah, that was Lara. Prost was through already, and Prost, in fact, was delayed on that last lap, but could be slowly catching Mansell. And there's Ayrton Senna behind Schumacher, and Senna needs to get past Schumacher pretty quickly. He got heavily carved up then.
By Olivier Griard, and that has given Schumacher the opportunity to pull away. Senna, of course, can use the... And he's very angry indeed with Olivier Griard, who's getting a bad reputation for getting in people's way. He certainly got in the way of Ayrton Senna there, and the Brazilian angrily waved his hand at the Frenchman as he went past.
And we have a new fastest lap of the race for Nigel Mansell, and that is significant because even on his relatively warm tyres, Mansell is able to put in a super quick lap. We haven't actually seen, and that's a pit stop there for Nelson Piquet. Tyres late in the race for Piquet. And Senna, of course, still behind Schumacher. We haven't seen what he can do yet on his fresh tyres relative to Mansell. And Griard certainly has delayed him by as much as a whole lap. He's put back Senna's chase. So there's the caption there for Mansell's fastest lap.
And you're looking at Michael Schumacher in fourth place, and Ayrton Senna taking it from the 22-year-old German, who is driving an absolutely magnificent race. Hats off to him. Nigel Mansell leads on lap 37 out of 53. He leads Alain Prost in the Ferrari by 11 seconds. Gerhard Berger is 3 seconds behind Prost. And now Ayrton Senna is fourth ahead of Schumacher, fifth. De Cesaris in the Jordan is up into sixth position as Nelson Piquet has gone into the pits. Ivan Capelli is seventh. Down to eighth goes Nelson Piquet. Gianni Morbidelli in the Minardi is in ninth place. Comas is 10th. Pirro is 11th. His teammate J.J. Leto is in 12th place. Mark Blundell is 14th, and Martin Brundle is in 15th place. They have both been lapped.
Yes, and Mansell now looks to have the race well under control. He's pulling away still from Alain Prost. Gap now nearly 12 seconds. Senna has got too much traffic between himself and Mansell to be a real threat, even if his fresh rubber is a big advantage. And Mansell really looks well set. Now, the whole attitude for him will have changed from within the cockpit of the Williams. He can afford now to cool it down and work purely for the finish to get the car in one piece. There's a shredded tyre, and that is J.J. Leto.
Yes, coming into the pits, and Mansell, of course, has now got a 7-point lead over Senna at the moment. Mansell on 10 points, because Ayrton Senna in 4th position is on 3 points. But Senna pushing very hard indeed. Of course, when he comes up to Gerhard Berger, there is no doubt that the Austrian, who is currently in 3rd position, will move over and let him through, as J.J. Leto in the Dallara Judd comes into the pitch for a very obvious reason. Mansell out on his own, lap 39.
Well, Senna is making his response, but it's too late, I'm sure, to do any real damage. New fastest lap of the race for Ayrton Senna. And Berger, of course, will make way, I'm sure, for Senna, but the big thing is, can Senna catch Prost?
Jonathan Palmer in the pits with Patrese.
Riccardo, we saw you spin. We then saw you stop. Could you tell us what happened, please?
Well, for the spin, I got a small hesitation in the gearbox. Didn't catch third when I was braking for Variante Ascari. And then I went into third while I was going into the corner, locked a little bit the rear wheel, and I spun. And I could go away from that. Okay, I did half a lap, and then the gearbox broken completely.
Great shame, Riccardo. We're very sorry for you.
Now, those words from Riccardo Patrese will give real worry to Williams enthusiasts, because, again, Williams has had a gearbox problem. And we know that that was what took Nigel Mansell out in Canada. We know that it's lost the Williams team a lot of points, the semi-automatic gearbox. So, Williams fans really start praying now that nothing happens to Nigel Mansell's gearbox, as it has happened to Patrese. Meantime, the Englishman leads Prost by 13 seconds. He's pulling away. That is Leto's Dallara being retired. Berger is 3rd, and he's only 1 second ahead of Senna, who is 4th. Schumacher is still in 5th position, and in the Jordan, Andrea De Cesaris is 6th.
Yes, and I certainly owe Riccardo Patrese an apology for my remarks there. It looked like a mistake he'd made, but once again the Williams gearbox seems to have tripped him up and then broken on him, and that's bad luck for Patrese, because he was doing a fabulous job until that moment, and certainly we've given him praise for that, and I do beg his pardon for suggesting it was his mistake.
Well, fingers crossed, Mansell and Williams enthusiasts. Here he is. I hesitate to say anything, but now you're going to see Gerhard Berger move over and follow team orders and discipline, and let Ayrton Senna move up into 3rd position, to move up from 3 points to more.
Yes, and there's no way, all things being equal, that Senna is going to catch Mansell unless Mansell runs into some sort of mechanical problem or a major tyre problem. But the question now is, can Senna make 2nd place? Berger will let him go. Prost is was last time they came by, some 5 seconds ahead, and still is, and Senna's through, so we shall see if Senna can set about, catch and pass Alain Prost. He's got fresh tyres on, Prost hasn't, and that should certainly be an advantage for him.
And the caption gives you the first 6. And the 3rd and 4th. Ayrton Senna driving that smooth, immaculate way of his, and he's gambling on the fact that he is on fresh tyres, new rubber, better grip. Or his grip, of course, the margin between his grip and Nigel Mansell's will become greater as the time goes on, because Mansell's tyres will start to wear. Senna is on a completely new set, so you can expect the gap between Mansell and Senna, who is currently 3rd, to diminish as the race goes on. It's a terrific tactical battle. We're riding with Nelson Piquet at the present moment. He's chasing Ivan Capelli in front. Piquet is in 8th place. Ivan Capelli is 7th. And as you see, Piquet is now the quickest man on the course, and that is very close indeed to the lap record, and that of course is because the Brazilian, 3 times world champion, and he's won 4 times in Italy, has Nelson Piquet, is on new tyres. He's got the Ford Cosworth V8 engine behind him. It's tremendously quick on the straight, over 200 miles an hour, and Piquet, like Senna, has got an advantage which will develop as the race goes on. Senna carving his way through the midfield men, now the fastest, and that 126.001 compares with his own previous lap record of 126.2, so it's a new lap record for Ayrton Senna on lap 42, with Mansell leading Prost now by 14 seconds, and Prost is 3.6 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, and Senna is lapping some 2 seconds faster than the Ferrari, so it's not going to be very long as Martin Brundle sprints out of the pits on yet another new set of tyres. It's not going to be very long before Senna is up into second place, and we are on lap 42 out of 53. It's going to be a tremendously exciting climax. The last few laps of the Italian Grand Prix should be terrific, with Senna catching Nigel Mansell. And the race order is Mansell leading. Prost is in second position. You saw Prost going through now. There he is. And Senna is coming up to take Emanuele Pirro in the Dallara Judd as they go into the Rettifilio. He hasn't got past, and he won't do it until he gets out of it. But you can see that the gap between himself and Alain Prost in second place is coming down. Berger 4th, Schumacher is in 5th position, De Cesare is 6th, Capelli 7th, Piquet is 8th, Morbidelli is 9th, Comas is 10th, Pirro is 11th, Ricard is in 12th position, and then the 2 Brabham Yamahas of Blundell and Brundle. Senna. Now he's coming up to lap the Ligier of Eric Comas, the Frenchman, in his first season of full Grand Prix racing. And it's giving Alain Prost the opportunity to ease away a bit, but not anymore. There's a clear track between Prost in the Ferrari and Senna in the McLaren as they go into the Ascari bends on lap 43. Mansell still leading by 14.5 seconds. Piquet about to take 7th place from Ivan Capelli in front in the Leighton House. Coming up to the Rettifilio, he goes through doing 200 miles an hour at that point, and then he closes right down.
Yes, and that was a marvellous view of just what it's like to be getting a tow as Capelli leaves himself no room to get into the corner and nearly emerges still ahead of Prost. But that was overcommitting by Capelli, and he had nowhere to go because Piquet was inside him, and that was poor driving from one so experienced. But we had a marvellous view from Piquet's cockpit then of just what it's like as you get this tremendous suck in the tow, in the hole in the air, and the car goes quicker and quicker as you come up on the chap in front, and then the momentum carries you past.
Well, the 2 bosom chums are almost together again now. Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna, who 2 years in succession took each other off in Japan, but they are supposed to have mended their enmity and to be, if not enemies, at least just cool to each other rather than quite the opposite. And Alain Prost in second position has got the unpleasant experience for him of seeing the McLaren get closer and closer to him through those mirrors attached to his windscreen. He's coming down to the Parabolica now. They are on lap 44. It's a 53-lap race, and when Senna gets past Prost, as I think he will, perhaps not this lap, but the lap after, I think the gap is going to be about 15 seconds between him and the race leader, Nigel Mansell.
Yes, and in all this excitement, it's been quite easy to guess and to not notice what's going on behind the main players in this all-action Grand Prix. But the fact of the matter is that sitting just out of sight all the time and not dropping back from this company at all is Michael Schumacher, who's currently running in 5th place, only 4 seconds behind Gerhard Berger, and about 6 or 7 behind Senna. So this is a really remarkable and excellent performance by Michael Schumacher.
Yes, with Senna getting closer and closer to Prost, who is not going to move over willingly to let the Brazilian through. I remember earlier on in the season, Alain Prost said, I have given up any hope of winning the World Championship, but I'm certainly going to do everything I can to help Nigel Mansell win it. Well, he's in a position to do just that now, because he can make it very difficult indeed for Ayrton Senna to get past. It's the difference between 10 points for winning, 6 points for second, and 4 points for third position. And Prost has got those 6 points at the moment. And in the background you can see Gerhard Berger in fourth position, and he is leading Michael Schumacher by about 4 seconds. As James said, the 22-year-old German is driving a quite stunning first full-length Grand Prix. Remember, he got very little way from the distance, and Senna now is right up with Prost. But now Mansell is 16.4 seconds ahead, and every lap that Mansell can increase his lead means that there is 1 lap less for Ayrton Senna to cut into it, and he's still not past the Ferrari.
Yes, I'm sure that Senna's ambition in this race is confined to second place, and he's made at which he is now taking. He's passed Alain Prost. And his only further job to do now is first of all to fend off Alain Prost, who will no doubt try and make a response, but then to put pressure on Nigel Mansell to keep him driving fast, to keep him pushing his Williams all the way to the finish in an attempt to push some sort of mistake out of Nigel or some sort of mechanical disadvantage out of the Williams. Neither the case is particularly likely, but it's worth it doing. But in the meantime, he's still got Prost responding, retaliating, and really breathing down his neck.
Yes, I hate to say it, but it is not inconceivable in view of the problems that Williams have had with that semi-automatic gearbox in the past, which have been replicated again in Riccardo Patrese's car, that it could happen to Nigel Mansell. Meantime, Senna is certainly pulling away from Prost. You can see that. There are 6 laps to go now, including the one they are on, and Mansell leads with 10 points potentially in his grasp by 17.7 seconds. And Mansell on the previous lap was faster than Senna, hardly surprising, because Senna, of course, had got Prost in front of him and was trying to get past. And you can see now that Ayrton Senna is speeding up. Mansell leads, Senna second, Prost out of third, Berger is fourth. So from the point of view of the Constructors' Championship, McLaren are in a strong position with Senna in second place, Berger in fourth position. Schumacher is in fifth place. De Cesaris is in sixth position, but he has got Nelson Piquet, and we're with Piquet now. And that is Andre De Cesaris in the Jordan Ford in sixth place, ahead of the Brazilian, who is fighting for a World Championship point and looking as though he's going to get it. Now, this is Nelson Piquet's 200th Grand Prix. His place in the Benetton team is at risk because Tom Walkinshaw's team have signed Michael Schumacher, and there are strong rumours, which everybody denies, that Walkinshaw has also signed Martin Brundle, in which case Nelson Piquet, wiping his windscreen at about 180 miles an hour, is not only fighting for a World Championship point, but to retain his place in the team.
Yes, there were rumours here that his place in the team was under threat this very weekend to make way for Michael Schumacher if Roberto Moreno couldn't have been manoeuvred out of his car as Piquet gets into the tow, gets right up behind De Cesaris, but De Cesaris is making himself wide, defending his position, and still maintains his place in front of Nelson Piquet. Now coming up to cross the line, and Piquet there 47 laps, and this time he has got enough, and I'm sure Piquet will carry past him this time. And the Renofilio, and no sign of the nose of the Jordan, so Nelson Piquet moves into sixth place.
Both Benettons in the top 6, and I think in my mind that Ayrton Senna has decided that he's going to hope that something goes wrong with Mansell's Williams and that if it doesn't, he will settle for second place and the 6 points that go with it, because Mansell is pulling away from Ayrton Senna in second place. There is Nigel Mansell. He's on his 49th lap out of 53, and he is leading, or was on the previous lap, Ayrton Senna by some 18 seconds, and I think it's going to be more than that when the Brazilian goes through, as he does now, 18.25 seconds, and their lap time on the previous lap was as near the same, as makes absolutely no difference at all. So, fingers crossed in Britain for Nigel Mansell and for Williams. He's on his way to his 4th Grand Prix victory and the 10 points that go with it this season. Ayrton Senna second. Prost has obviously given up for the third place. He's 2 seconds behind Senna now as Mansell goes under the bridge. See the banking in the background from the old Monza circuit through the Ascari bends. And he's got Martin Brundle there in front of him. Mansell is coming up to complete his 49th lap. Then laps 50, 51, 52, 53 to go. 4 laps, each of 3.6 miles. Mansell exits the parabolica, crosses the grid lines, completes the lap. Previously it was 18.25 seconds between him and the McLaren Honda. Locks up momentarily there, he's still pushing very hard. Fastest lap, Ayrton Senna, 1:26.061. That is Olivier Griard walking in out of the race with the Fonmetal. He's only finished in 1 race this year and was very much hoping that this would be his second. Not to be. But Mansell, who won in France, Britain, Germany, second places in Monaco, Mexico and Hungary, he led all the way in Canada, only to roll home to take 1 point and 6th position, and has failed to finish 4 times. But the Achilles heel of the Williams, almost literally the Achilles heel, the gearbox, let Riccardo Patrese down after a quite magnificent drive, fighting his way up into the lead that would have helped Nigel Mansell so much, because I have no doubt that Mansell would have gone through. That would have given Williams the 1st and 2nd places, and it would, of course, more importantly from Mansell's point of view, denied Ayrton Senna the points for 2nd position, which it looks as though he's going to get as Mansell goes through into his 51st lap. 3 laps to go, including the one that he is on. And if they stay where they are now, Mansell on 10 points will have reduced the gap in the World Championship to Ayrton Senna by 4 points, to a lead for Ayrton Senna of 18 points. And that's still a gigantic mountain to climb for the Englishman. But if he can keep it up, there's still 5 races to go in Portugal, in Spain, and Japan and Australia, which of course makes 4 races to go. And if he can keep on chipping away and hope that something goes wrong with Senna, Mansell is still in the World Championship.
Yes, very much so. It's been... World Championships have been won from further behind than this, with less races to go in the past, and I can speak from personal experience on that. And so all is by no means lost yet for Mansell. This is just the result he wanted. He would have preferred Senna not to be in the points at all, but it's a good win for him, and it's keeping him on the right track. And the championship is absolutely alive. Now, what we need is Mansell to have no problems in the last couple of laps to get his win, and the stage is set for a grandstand finish to the championship. 2 laps to go.
And I'm not going to do a Murray Walker and start talking about victories before they have been achieved. I will simply say that Nigel Mansell is on his 52nd lap now. He's got this one to complete and the next one to do, with a commanding lead over Ayrton Senna, as for that matter he had in Canada. fifth race of the year, only to roll to a standstill. Well, he's now into the Lesmo bends, then onto the Seraglio, which is a sixth gear, 180 mile an hour stretch before he goes down through that semi-automatic gearbox into third gear, 120 miles an hour through the Ascari chicane, up to the Parabolica, and when Nigel Mansell exits that right-hander, it will be to start his 53rd and last lap, very much in the lead.
Yes, and what a tremendous Grand Prix we've had today. Mansell, it looks easy now, but it certainly wasn't for most of the race. He had to work all the way until Senna went for tyres at 2/3 distance to get the lead. He had to fight. His teammate Patrese was in there, and we had a tremendous battle up front. But the significant factor of the race, apart from this tightening of the World Championship battle, has been the performance of Michael Schumacher, who in the Benetton is currently at this moment running some 7.5 seconds behind Gerhard Berger and some 15 seconds in front of his own teammate for this race, Nelson Piquet. However, it doesn't forgive. That's a tremendous performance and tremendous news for Benetton. It does not forgive the difficulties that have gone on, the contractual arguments, the moving around in the season, and the extraordinary business of Mercedes putting their driver into a Ford-sponsored car. As we look at Nigel Mansell on his last lap, going as Mika Häkkinen in front of him, going into the two Lesmos. And tremendous performance for Michael Schumacher, but I wonder just where he would have been, would he have been in front of Berger had he been in the Jordan, which on the evidence here was the better car of the two.
So Mansell up to Mika Häkkinen, who is in 14th place. He's into the Ascari bends for the last time. He's leading Senna by 17 seconds, and surely, this time it's going to happen, and Mansell is going to come home for his fourth very well-deserved victory of 1991. Into the Parabolica for the last time. When he gets out of it, he really could put the car into neutral and coast home, and I'm going to say that Nigel Mansell has won the Italian Grand Prix. He thinks so. He's waving his hand. He has. Mansell wins and takes the 10 points that goes with it. A magnificent victory. A delighted Williams team. And a delighted, of course, Frank Williams, Patrick Head, Adrian Newey, who so capably designed this car with Patrick Head. And Ayrton Senna finishes in second position, 16.3 seconds behind Nigel Mansell. Alain Prost finishes only half a second behind Ayrton Senna. You didn't see it, but Prost made a terrific charge on the last lap, and he lapped 2 seconds quicker than Ayrton Senna, who I believe had backed off rather than being in trouble. Gerhard Berger in the second. Well done, Nigel. Applauding himself, applauding the team, applauding the crowd, applauding anything. But as James has said, the drives of this race came, and that is Gerhard Berger, who has run out of petrol, I believe, on the last lap. And that means to say that he is out of the points. That affects McLaren, of course, in the Constructors' Championship. And subject to official confirmation, the result is that Berger had crossed the line. He just got home. So Mansell wins, Senna second, Prost third, Berger home in fourth place. Michael Schumacher finishes the first Grand Prix that he's gone the full distance in, and only his second race, in a superb point-scoring fifth position. And both the Benettons are in the top six, with Nelson Piquet in sixth position. So, James, the championship is still open.
Very much so. As I said before, championships have been won from further behind than this, with fewer races to go. And so, obviously, luck will play a part, as it always does. And for Mansell to catch and pass Senna, a breakdown by Senna in the McLaren Honda in one of the next couple of races would certainly be a big help. But Williams, once again, has proved its superiority. The car is quite clearly the best car in the business at the moment. McLaren Honda have improved their car, but then they've closed the gap. But they are still outclassed in terms of speed. With Portugal coming up, that should suit the Williams particularly. And really, it's going to be, it's a clinging on job for McLaren Honda to try and hold on. They've got to finish races, and they've got to try and stay as close to the Williams as they possibly can.
Well, as Nigel Mansell drives home, I can tell you a lot of people who are going to be very, very happy with this result, and that's all the people in Australia who are hoping that the championship is going to be decided in Adelaide. Well, it's got one stage closer to just that happening here in Italy today. As you can see, the McLaren team have still very much got the championship lead. 15 points lead over Williams. They started this race with a 16-point lead, so it hasn't been carved into very much. And once again, it's the gearbox that has let Riccardo Patrese down. Once again, the people from Didcot, which is where the Williams team have their headquarters, will be looking very hard at that problem. And that, of course, is Andrea De Cesaris's Moreno's Jordan. I apologise. Moreno's Jordan. You saw the bent front suspension where he had gone off. But let's just look over this race again. Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese forcing the McLaren Honda of Ayrton Senna every inch of the way. Ayrton Senna resisting the pressure manfully. It may have been that the Williams game plan was to push Senna so hard that his tyres would go off and he would have to change them. If that was the game plan, it worked brilliantly. But in the process, Riccardo Patrese goes off. Nigel Mansell goes through. So Senna had both Williams pass him fairly and squarely. And Gerhard Berger, incidentally, I've just had a message from the pit lane, retired not through having run out of petrol, as I incorrectly suspected, but from an electrical problem. But if there was a man of the race with not just the Tifosi and the flags of Brazil, but the Union flag, the Union Jack waving there to greet Nigel Mansell home. This is an enormously enthusiastic crowd, and they traditionally fill the circuit after the race is finished. That is exactly what is happening before my very eyes. And unless I'm very much mistaken, Nigel Mansell is going to be up there on the podium soon, having won the Italian Grand Prix.
Yes, the fourth victory of 1991 for Nigel, the 20th victory of his career, and he's cut Ayrton Senna's lead to 18 points. It was 22. Just 4 races left, race 13 out of the 16 in 2 weeks' time at Estoril. The Portuguese Grand Prix grandstand will be there. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren now have a 15-point lead over Williams. So Williams, it's been a good day all round, just cut that by 1 point. Now then, highlights tonight on BBC 2, 9:35 for anybody who's missed the early stages of that or all of it.
Now second, Prost third, Berger home in fourth place. Michael Schumacher finishes the first Grand Prix that he's gone the full distance in, and only his second race in a superb point-scoring 5th position. And both the Benettons are in the top 6 with Nelson Piquet in 6th position.
I think it was a fabulous race to watch. It was a fabulous race to be in. It was a great fight at the beginning between Ayrton, myself, and Riccardo. I wasn't sure whether Riccardo was my teammate at one time or not, because he was pushing me very hard when I was right behind Ayrton. Then I decided to let Riccardo go because I wanted him to duck and dive with Ayrton to use his tyres up. So I dropped back then just to conserve my tyres in my own airflow, which worked real good. And then I woke up a little bit when Riccardo got past. I thought, okay, fine, I better go for it now. And then Riccardo immediately obviously had a gearbox problem, which made him spin. And then it was between Ayrton and myself again. And then I think Ayrton ran into a little bit of a tyre problem, and I managed to squeeze by just before he went into the pits. And then it was a very hard race at the end because I'd blistered, I think, all my tyres by this time.
I think it was a tough race, and I was not as quick as the two Williams, and I was struggling. I was struggling with them. They were pushing me. They were pushing me at the beginning, and it was difficult. But then Riccardo got by, managed to get by. Then he had a problem, and Nigel was right there, and he managed to get by the same place again. And from there on, I couldn't follow Nigel. I knew I had some type of problem anyway. So I decided to stop. and it paid off, because otherwise I would have fall back a lot and I wouldn't even have finished second. So it was a second place, very good.
So a marvellous fourth win of the season for Nigel Mansell, ahead of Ayrton Senna, who finished only half a second in front of Alain Prost. Berger finished fourth just before he stopped, and a quite outstanding fifth place for Michael Schumacher in his debut drive for Benetton, with his teammate Nelson Piquet sixth in his 200th Grand Prix. And now the World Championship gap is down to 18 points between Senna and Mansell, with Alain Prost back to fifth as a result of his fine drive. Williams are 1 point closer to McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, but 15 is a big gap. 4 races to go. Mansell could still win his championship, and Williams could still win theirs. It's Portugal in 2 weeks' time, and Williams say they'll go well there too. Watch it on BBC television. It was a superb Italian Grand Prix. All Italy loved it, and most of all, in their knowledgeable way, they loved